Afternoon, everyone. My name is Chaudoir, and I'm going to be giving a presentation today about environmental sustainability, where to start, and how to encourage others. I like to start with this image just for the fact that reminds me of a saying that I've always thought was very relevant is think global, start local, because if you believe in that something's important, it has to start somewhere, and the best place to start is wherever you are. Starting things off, there's a book that I found very moving and meaningful in my life. It seems kind of silly based on the subject material, but actually it's called The Natural Step for Communities, and it outlines the framework for sustainability on communal scale, and it offers examples that were successful for businesses that were actually near bankruptcy, which I thought was a prime example that the efficiency of it is profound, as well as environmental changes that are presented to these communities and businesses. A quote from that book was, these two trends to declining natural systems and rising population and consumption are like two sides of a funnel that are converging upon each other. The time available for stabilizing these trends, the margin for action, is diminishing, and is not known at what point irreversible effects will occur. Now, that isn't the only thing that was meaningful in that book to me, but it really stood out to me at the time. To back up a little bit, actually, when it makes a difference. When I was first introduced to this material, I was actually a transfer student at NWTC in the around 2010 or 2008 rather, excuse me. And I ended up going to like a book club, if you will, at St. Norbert's for this book, and we'd read portions and come back and discuss it. And through this book, I was introduced to a lot of other materials that also just sort of kept me moving forward on things that I thought were really meaningful. And otherwise, this was a very new frontier with sustainability, and just learning about what potential was out there was a very exciting thing. This book, I found out, is actually published by New Society Publishers, which offer a wide array of different subjects that they cover, including equity and diversity, modern homesteading and farming, social responsibilities. As you can see, they cover a lot of off the beaten path materials, I think. They also published a book that I found to be a very useful tool as far as trying to apply sustainable practices. And because, especially if you're first looking to get into practicing sustainability, it's just kind of like, well, maybe I don't have that much time available to me, or I am limited on what I can do, especially if I'm, living in an apartment or on a campus of a university. And one thing you find out, though, is that one thing that everyone has in common is that we are all consumers in one way or another. And a book that I really wanted to talk most about was The Better World Shopping Guide by Ellis Jones. He also wrote a book called The Better World Handbook, which came out in 2007. But The Better World Shopping Guide actually is on its 6th edition, which was released 2017. And I found it interesting though, because I had the opportunity to speak with him a few weeks back. You know, I was curious as to how he came to writing this book, and he told me about his first experience where he was significantly moved as an undergrad on Earth Day in 1990, and he talked about a lot of literature that was presented to him at the time, and two of which that he mentioned most was the better shopping for a better world, and how to make the world a better place. The Shopping for a Better World is by Ben Hollister, and the Shopping for a Better World is by Jay Hollander. And what he had told me about was that, you know, especially with the Shopping for a Better World, well, it sounds a lot like his title, and the reason that is because it's like, well, they'll keep going with it. It only covered so much, but it covered a lot, what it did, and, you know, something like this would require later editions to maintain with the times, and they didn't. So him and some colleagues came out with the Better World Handbook in 2007, and that was himself, Alice Jones, Ross Hanfler, and Brett Johnson. And in the Better World Handbook, there is some very great material about specifically like thought traps, which I think is really critical because when you're thinking about trying to practice sustainability and being effective about these things. And the same could be said about any sort of like, you know, global movement that you want to be a part of. Because thought traps, you know, are just the sort of things that deter us from doing things like, well, that's just how the world is, you know, or that's not my responsibility, or one person can't do this, you know, it's like, you know, I'm not an activist, or it's like, I'm not, you know, Mother Teresa or Gandhi, you know, or I don't know enough about it to make a difference. And these sort of thoughts, you know, can deter us from doing anything, but they have a lot of great reasons to despite that, you know, that it's like, you know, and even though we're only one person, if we all work together, we can create great changes. You know, overcoming these sort of thought traps is a key part of all of it. But I wanted to talk more about the Better World Shopping Guide. Oh, and by the way, I wanted to mention too, I was looking, and the Better World Handbook, you can actually see a great majority of the book actually from Amazon, where you can view inside, and actually a good portion of it is actually available. But with the Better World Shopping Guide, these are some pages that are directly from it, and I thought that he captured it pretty well. One of the big things that I seen, because our capacity as consumers, you know, is in a sense another way to vote. You know, with the annual amount of money that you spend on food and books and resources that you need in your day-to-day life, the more educated you are on the products that are available out there, the better chance you can do, or a better use you can make of putting the money that you spend to work by rewarding the people who take greater consideration to social issues and environmental issues, rather than just going with what's convenient or based off of what you know or don't know that's available. And some of the issues that takes into consideration with this book are human rights, the environment, animal protection, community involvement, and social justices. And as you can see on the screen here, the human rights that covers child labor and sweatshops and slavery. And all of these things are taken into consideration to offer a quick, convenient grade reference to different companies. And this next page here, we have that explained in greater depth. The sources include, as you can see on the left here, the American Humane Association, organizations like Climate Change Research and Free to Work and Greenpeace and a lot of these non-political organizations. And their rankings are developed where an extensive amount of data is combed through. In fact, a lot of this data, the research that has been done, he's actually, Dr. Alice Jones is a professor at Holy Cross University in Massachusetts, and actually a lot of his students have incorporated in a lot of his work. Oh, excuse me. He applies all this information into the grades that offers for these different things. And in this book, the way that the book itself is actually organized is it's alphabetical based on products that you'll be looking for. So like I've listed chocolate, for instance, just for the fact that who doesn't like chocolate, right? And it's an area of great concern as far as social responsibilities and environmental causes go. There's a lot of, as you can see, on the left, you can see the grades that are offered to the different companies. And these are 2 pages, as you can see in the numbering, because these are actual PDFs from the book that Dr. Jones actually gave me. You can see that they go into greater detail on the right about some of the specific companies that are more notable for doing great things versus not so great things. Green hero versus corporate villain, of course. And I went ahead and put up a screenshot from the application, because there's actually a really convenient phone app version of this. So it's applicable to everyone, free download and all. But one of the things that comes to mind is just like, okay, well, I'm not just going to buy something just because it's, it's not just because someone tells me to, because it's just basically a commercial. And it's like, well, why should I trust these ratings? Well, as you can see, it's to avoid spin. There's no data that's taken from companies. There's all the data is available, which he is very transparent with this. It's available in greatest detail on the website, but it's available on the app as well. And furthermore, he's actually very easy to contact as well. As you can see at the bottom of that page or of that screenshot, it says if there's any point where I can improve the system and where it seems to be missing the marks, please don't hesitate to contact me. And it's a very straightforward thing. As well as the fact that, of course, he is a professor, he's involved in academia, and it's all about just forwarding information. Now, like I had mentioned, it's available in an app format. So I also included screenshots from the app. And if you look to the left, that's the Better World Shopper, which is the app version of the book. And you can see what I mean about how everything is alphabetized by goods. So when you go ahead and find what you're looking for. You end up, like with chocolate or candies, it's like you end up getting a letter grade. The only thing that is sort of limiting about this is that, like, when you find the information, as you can see on the right, it says Reese's. If a company ends up with a D range, and it's a very generic grading of what that letter means. But again, if you go to the website, you can find out more. But there's also another app that Ellis Jones is working on. He actually has a few that him and his students have been working on. There's also, besides these two, there's also Media Glass and Voter Glass, which both of those are actually just a similar format for like media news outlets, and also then Voter Glass would be for different political candidates based on like fact checkers and PolitiFacts. But I didn't go into those in too much detail, just for the fact that that's not what this is about right now. But they are both very interesting, and I recommend checking those out as well. But to go from the Better World Shopper, if you're looking for greater details on some of these companies, I recommend the Eco Report Card. As you can see, the layout's a little different. I mean, downfall is that there's less companies involved in it. The upside is that the ones that they do have covered are covered at greater lengths, which I have showcased here. You can see from his app that it offers a little bit of a biography about that company, some articles relating to that company from various sources, about different happenings, good and bad. And this one is unique for the fact as well that it isn't just his, the research that he's been a part of. There's actually 5 different sources specifically that are doing this now as well. Those 5 sources are over here: the Better World Shopper, the Ethical Consumer, the Good Guide, the Reasonable Shopper, and Shop Ethical. And these are in some cases they're outside of the United States. You have the Ethical Consumer from the United Kingdom, and Shop Ethical is actually from Australia. So it's interesting. I mean, and it's very straightforward. It's just based off of what's available. Like this one is Amy's Kitchen, which they did very well from what was available. It's an American company, and I chose that one because I actually have personal experience with it. That is actually a very high quality product in my opinion. I think that they make good food. I would highly recommend their refried beans. Just some shameless promotion on that for them, but ultimately I would say that they have a wider variety. And if you look at these articles that they reference, they have acronyms behind them, like for Business Insider is one of the reviews in here. But it makes it very straightforward and easy. And that's kind of what one of the reasons I was really drawn to this book initially, that the Better World Shopping Guide, as well as as I found out, he actually has these apps available on phones. It makes it very accessible, so that way you don't even have to buy the book necessarily. It's something that can be readily accessed while you're in the grocery store. And went on to say further that besides just trying to like change the way that we shop, there's other things as well, where avoiding conventional plastic packaging, because as it's becoming more and more of a realized issue, plastic does not break down easy, and a lot of it ends up in the ocean. And even though it's recyclable, a lot of it ends up becoming doesn't necessarily end up being recycled, and it can only be recycled up to a certain point. So there's changes that are being made. There are corn-based plastics and biodegradable plastics that are available out there right now. But in the meantime as well, if you're not sure, an easy alternative is to try and use materials that are easier to recycle, like glass or paper or cardboard. And another good practice as a whole too is avoiding individual packaging as much as possible. And like I also mentioned joining interest groups, because I actually first was introduced to the Better World Shopping Guide because my wife and I joined a group called the Door County Thrive Group, in which they hosted discussions and banquets, and they'd have guest speakers and do seed swaps in the spring for people who garden. But that was one of the products they had available, was that book. And you know, the passing of information. It's also, now granted, during COVID times, of course, this is not exactly an ideal time to try and do those sort of things, but we still have options with webinars and whatnot. But down the road, it's always like a nice way to put, like I said, post-COVID conditions, to be able to like interact, and you know, if you move, to get to know a new community and make new friends, and also just help pass information. Of course, there's things that can be done with public transportation and bicycling. And as always, learn more whenever possible. I mentioned some materials that I found very meaningful myself, but the fact of the matter is that there are infinite amounts of resources that potential, that is not necessarily resources, that the internet provides. And of course, encourage others. I mentioned that too, mostly just for the fact that, like, if you find yourself in difficult conversations with friends or family, or or even if somebody's interested in actually making changes to their own lives, or they want to find out more, it's always nice to have that information available. And that's where like when you, like in my own personal life, I've found that that I've had conversations with people, and sometimes, you know, when you're more prepared to like talk about things that you really care about, or that, you know, you find relevant and important, and you think other people should find it important too, it always helps to start with things that are of consequence in their own life, you know, because you know, you can't necessarily always just get them to feel the same emotions you feel from something, but it's like when you bring it to their world on an interest. I've had very interesting conversations with people you would never expect to be interested in environmental issues remotely, just for the fact that I started by talking about biodiesels and about converting diesel engines over, and I mean, it's that wonder that the sort of changes that we can make in our lives aren't always the same, and you know, walking into things with a open mind, and you know, understanding that you can't change everyone's opinion, but you can offer facts is always good. And you know, being able to cite sources always helps too, but it doesn't always do it either. But I wanted to close it off with this quote from Rachel Carson from Silent Spring that I found very moving some years back. It says, "We stand now where two roads diverge, but unlike the roads in Robert Frost's familiar poem, they're not equally fair. The road we have long been traveling is deceptively easy, a smooth superhighway on which we progress with great speed. But at its end lies disaster, the other fork of the road. the one less traveled by offers our only chance to reach a destination that assures the preservation of our earth. And now, Rachel Carson wrote A Silent Spring, and it was a very moving book, and it was written back in the 1960s. And it still, I feel it still has relevance to this day. I found it very moving. I hope that everyone found the information I presented useful. And I hope that no matter what cause you think is the most important, that you pursue it, and that, you know, no matter what your major may be or whatever your career path is in life, that if we all dedicate a small portion of our free time and that to things that we care about, we can change things. And I have references here. And at this point, if anybody has any questions or comments, I open the floor to that. Okay, Dr. Cohen says, how do you see the role of local community and local citizens in your area playing a more active role? I think that that it starts with, like I said, I think that the easiest place for anyone to start is consumerism. That's why I tried to outline that most heavily. And I think that our habits as consumers really change things. There's also, you know, more outspoken or like when people organize on causes that they believe in, like making public transportation more readily available that can help curb carbon emissions. These sort of things kind of ramp up and build off of each other. And I think that like within my own community, like I live up in Sturgeon Bay, up in Door County, north of Green Bay. We actually had city council members that have been more proactive to where we have more shared lanes for bicyclists and making our city more bike friendly. And because a lot of our infrastructure is structured around around consumers having their own vehicles, it's kind of an awkward thing. So it all has to start somewhere, and I think that that's where each individual believing in causes and stepping forward towards changing things that they see need to be made better is where it starts. Here's another one. What have you found to be the most effective way to get people to change their behaviors around this issue? Well, it's hard to say what can actually make people change their ways. I think that where like is I always like to start with letting them know what options are available. You know, it's kind of like the plastics thing where it's like, you know, you can buy like there are products available where you can get like individual plastic bags the way that people like to have them in the store. Um, and we all know that those blow around and never break down, but like a lot of stores can actually get corn-based plastic bags that actually break down. So I think that like starting a conversation about what's available out there and making it accessible, but at the end of the day, if the person really has to want to make these changes in their life, otherwise, you know, it's like you can, you know, it's just like anything else. You can't bring a horse to water, but make it drink. Yeah, so I think that it's all about presenting the options, and that's where like with these applications too, that a lot of times like a lot of us may talk to our parents, and I know for myself personally, and that's where I speak from, that like they're not even necessarily aware that, you know, plastics are such an issue, yet alone, you know, carbon emissions or anything else. And so making these sort of things known where you having these resources readily available, affordably, and like with these applications where it's free, it really makes a difference. I have another question here. It says, could you say more about how the pandemic has affected environmental-based consumerism? Do you see imaginative changes on the horizon? Well, it's one of, I personally, out of anything I've noticed with the pandemic, is that it's been really frustrating for the fact that because of the requirement of masks, and we needed them in quick demand, they're disposable masks that are available made of plastic. So now a lot of experts are seeing this as being the next major plastic issue. So I find it concerning. As far as it goes, though, too, it's also making people realize that you know, that we don't need to commute as much necessarily with working from at home. And so that's a big thing too. I thought that especially at the beginning of the pandemic, that like as scary and as frustrating as this has been, it was also remarkable to see you know, smog levels drop above Los Angeles. And you know, I think that like the biggest thing would be transportation. It's one thing that I noticed affected, but I just really hope that that, you know, that we can continue moving forward, because this has been a challenge. This has been a challenge for everyone, and yeah. So I'd say, though, as far as imaginative changes on the horizon, though, that that it would be that one thing I always find optimistic is that as younger generations, as time goes on, younger generations are taking on more levels of responsibility and having the opportunity to be that voice in a boardroom that says, you know, like, well, we should do, you know, we should check with consumers to see, you know, how relevant is it to them that these products be made biodegradable, or that, you know, that these sort of changes occur, and that, you know, it's being heard more and more, you know. All right, so if there aren't any more questions, thank everyone for tuning in today. It's a lot of fun doing this, and hope everyone has a good day.